Welcome to part 2 of our 4-part series on increasing your depth while spearfishing as well as your breath hold. In the first episode we covered 0 to 10 meters, so we're going to go a little bit deeper now, 10 to 20 meters, and we'll talk about some real basic stuff that might help you while you're spearfishing. The 10 to 20 meters is super attainable for anyone out there getting into the sport. It shouldn't take too long if you're putting in the right amount of time in the water to be able to achieve these depths. Hopefully I'll be able to show you some tips and maybe some tricks that might help you attain this even faster.
We're in winter time now, so the water's starting to cool off more and more, which can be a little bit more difficult to do deeper diving, as you tend to wear thicker wetsuits. The cold can come into it. You don't want to be too cold when you're trying to hold your breath. It's an absolute magic day today though.
Visibility looks good.
Didn't take long and I actually found this amazing swim through. It was about the perfect depth too for this filming. It's about maybe 15 meters to the bottom of it. I've swum along this bit of coast before and I've actually never seen it before. It was a good example to show how to weight yourself. I was just checking to see if my weighting's correct. I don't want to sink too much to the bottom here, but I seem to be at the perfect depth here that I'm able to slowly cruise without trying to keep myself down on the bottom and not float up. And I'm also sinking not too much. I've got my torch out because it's got some really cool underhangs. This is a sort of area that you could find some really nice fish to spear also. If it was a bit deeper, you might be more inclined to find golden snapper. You might get snapper parked up here at times. There was a seal on the surface that was causing a bit of mischief, so that might have put paid to what fish that might have been in here before I came. A beautiful piece of structure.
We found ourselves on a really great spot. There's so many fish here. Lots of big koharu. I've seen big kingfish, big snapper. It's a really nice spot. We'll practice some of our deeper stuff here and maybe pick up some pink mau or maybe a snapper or a kingfish. Watch when I'm making my dive. I have taken weight off from my shallower stuff in that 0 to 10 meters now that we're going a bit deeper. And although it's going to be a little bit more difficult to start with to get down, as my wetsuit and my body compresses and I start losing my buoyancy, you don't want to have too much weight on your belt. So it's going to require a little bit more effort with your kicking and with your duck dive to start with, but the rewards are much better when it's a lot easier to come back to the surface.
Here's an example of me making my duck dive. I'm a little bit more buoyant than I was in part 1, so there's a few extra bits I need to do. I'm slowly building up that forward momentum on the surface before making the duck dive, so then I can angle that and transfer it to going vertical rather than across. You'll see I'm needing to put a little bit more effort into my kicking to get down until I get to my neutral buoyancy. But once down, I'm able to just slowly cruise. I'm not rocketing down because I'm too heavy like a rock, and I'm also not floating up too much. When I'm not doing really deep dives, I'm always trying to be aware of my surroundings, because especially in New Zealand you could shoot so many different species on the way down. Just like this big snapper here, as I was coming over the edge, if I had my head tucked in I would have never seen it. I'll put a good shot in the side of the gill plate. My trusty cameraman's on the surface, waiting for the moment when I get back.
Even though we're trying to optimize our dives, you want to make sure on the way down you do keep your head up. We'll talk about how we might not do that so much when we're going really deep, but you see the snapper here, if I had my head fully tucked in and was just focused on the free dive, I would have missed out on it. So you always want to keep your wits about you when you're diving. Ideally we just want to dive 5 meters, we don't necessarily want to dive 20 meters if we can get a fish on the way down. And in this case, I spotted the snapper as I was coming over the edge, and I could get a good shot on him before going down too deep. If I wasn't focused and just kept swimming down, I would have missed out on him. Nice fish.
As I mentioned in part 1, there's lots of different ways to do a duck dive, so here's a good comparison with Sophie. She hasn't really been taught a lot of the stuff, so she's had to adapt and learn it for herself. See, she's making that forward momentum before making the dive. Used her hand for a little bit of propulsion, only just one swipe. One thing you do want to be cautious of, and I can be guilty of it too, is when you're arcing your head up to look where you're going, sometimes it can alter the angle that you're swimming down. So be cautious when you angle your head up, not to start swimming on a major angle. See, Sophie will slow her kicking as she's getting close to the surface and is able to drift straight back. Here's a comparison with me again. I've got my gun pointed vertical where I'm wanting to go. Slowly breathing up, creating that forward momentum and then transferring that vertical. I take one swipe with my hand and then I'm tucking it right in to help me keep streamlined. I have got my head up, but I'm trying to make my dive as vertical as possible so I'm not making it more difficult for myself. About now I'm getting towards neutral buoyancy and my kicking slows. Then on the way back to the surface, I can slow my kicking right down as I'm becoming really positive with my buoyancy. I'm also trying to stay on the spot where I want to dive, so I'm kicking every so often as there's a gentle current here. My kicking doesn't start till I get below the surface. You can tell by the effort I'm having to put in that I am a bit more buoyant. But that pays dividends when I get back to the surface. I've got to a nice plateau down in the kelp here. I'm not sinking into the kelp, making it difficult to see. I've got a nice light Wettie carbon gun, which means that I can easily balance it with my one hand out of the kelp. And I'm able to invite in this nice snapper to come check me out and put a nice shot in on it.
This is where practicing your deeper diving actually comes to help with your shallower diving, because the deeper you go and the more practice you do at that, is when you come in shallower you can get to hold your breath longer. You get a longer bottom time, and you can use that to weight in fish like snapper, which especially when you find them in shallow, like this one.
If there are fish about, you want to use that extra bottom time that you've made from doing your deeper dives and apply that to shallower dives so you can weight fish in.
With the way that I weight myself a little bit lighter than I am when I'm in shallow, as soon as I get to neutral buoyancy I'm going to slow my kicking right down. As we talked about in the first part, you don't want to waste too much oxygen doing lots of kicking. You don't want to strain yourself. That's how you're going to burn excess oxygen. So by the time I get down to neutral buoyancy, I'll slow my kicking right down, and then when I become really negatively buoyant, I'll stop kicking. So I just keep sinking down. Although you're not going down quick to the bottom, it's not a race to get to the bottom as fast as you can. We're trying to do it as efficient as we can.
I'll follow Sophie down on this dive to give another perspective of a few different techniques she puts into play. She's made amazing strides in only the few years she's been diving. She has an incredibly good breath hold for someone who's only been spearing for about 3 years. When you get so comfortable in the water, it's great because you're able to focus more on the hunting aspect rather than worrying that you constantly need to breathe. Here you can see she's nice and calm and just assessing the situation, drifting down nicely towards this pink mau-mau. Being able to sink towards fish like this with minimal kicking is not going to alert them. It's going to allow you to get nice and close, just like she did. You can see on the way to the surface, she's not too troubled about the desperation to need to breathe, and this will come with more time in the water. Pops her head out to get a breath before putting her snorkel back in. Another nice pink mau. Great eating, these fish. Again, here's an example of not trying to dive as deep as you possibly can. We're sticking within the limit that we're aiming at, between 10 to 20 meters. This is maybe at 13 meters, something like that. If I went over the edge and just kept diving as deep as I could, all I'm going to do is drive these fish back down. They're being lifted up by the current that's hitting this rock here, which is creating an upwelling and pushing the fish closer to the surface. It's not all about diving as deep as you possibly can. These fish aren't spooked as I'm being able to just go to a shallow point and sneak over. It's absolutely magical. So many fish here. Rather than going as deep as I possibly can, I'm able to spend a little bit more time up in the shallower zone. And that becomes a lot more effective for hunting fish, especially in New Zealand. Again, watch as I'm becoming really positively buoyant. I slow my kicking right down and I can drift to the surface to conserve some oxygen.
You want to cycle your dives nice and comfortably, so you don't want to spend too much time down there. We're not trying to max out every single dive we do. If you do that, it's going to accumulate and it's going to become more and more difficult to do those dives. So always try and cut your dives back, that they're not maxing out every single dive you do.
Another nice pink mamo with a perfect shot.
So we need to adjust our weight from our 0 to 10 meters. We're a little bit heavier and now we've gone out deeper in 10 to 20 meters. So we need to take 1 kilo, 2 kilos off depending on the thickness of your wetsuit. See what works well for you. You want to become neutral at a deeper depth than you were with 0 to 10 meters. It's going to require a little bit more energy and a little bit more kicking to get yourself below the surface to that neutral buoyancy. But the reward is when you come back to the surface, you're not going to have to work so hard. If you weight yourself too much, obviously it's a safety issue and you're going to burn a lot of oxygen on the way back to the surface. You're trying to control your dive as much as you can with your buoyancy and with your weighting. You don't want to sink too quickly because it's going to be hard to assess what you're seeing on the way down, but you also don't want to be too floaty that you're going to burn too much oxygen from kicking really hard all the way to the bottom. We want to become neutral at anywhere from sort of half the depth you're diving to maybe 3/4 of the depth you're diving. A few key things to take from this, if you can, especially from this part, is stay within your limits and also train within your limits. Even if you can dive a little bit deeper, but it's maxing out your dive time, it's maxing out your depth, it's not going to be that constructive and you actually improving your breath hold and improving your depth. You're better off staying in a little bit shallow and do repetitive dives at those depths and spending time on the bottom. Not only is this a safer way of doing things, but it's a slow and gradual build up as you're getting deeper and getting a longer breath hold. Just going balls to the wall, taking a real deep breath and diving as deep as you can and absolutely busting yourself is not going to do a lot for you apart from put yourself in a compromising position.
As always, the aim of us going out spearing is not just to talk about it, but actually trying to get a feed while we're out there. Me and Sophie have been able to accumulate a nice catch. We've got both pink mau, snapper, some koharu for some raw fish. The perfect amount of fish for us for the week. Join us for part 3 when we start checking out a little bit deeper in that 20 to 30 metre zone and hopefully go into some more different techniques that might help you improve yourself.